We are covering a global market sell-off this morning. This is underway right now. Now, the Nasdaq entered correction territory on Friday, but we have seen a worsening in the futures market of the major indices since we have been on the air since 6 a.m. Eastern time. We are barely off of session lows, but the Dow Jones Industrial is now down 1,250 points. That is a loss of more than 3%. The Nasdaq is down 1,067. That is a loss of 5.75%, and the S&P is down 231. That is a loss of more than 4.25%. I want to say also Europe is also in a tailspin. Just to let you know here, we do have the FTSE, the CAC 40, and the DAX, and all of them are substantially down. Germany taking the worst hit, down almost 3.5%. Asia, we had read across the board, and remember what we saw in Japan. Japan's now in a bear market. Japan lost 12%, over 12% actually, at the close. Mark Tepper and Liz Peek are on set with me. We have been watching this together all morning long. Mark.
It's getting ugly real fast out there. So, I mean, look, right now, the volatility index, or the fear gauge, which is a measure of how afraid investors are right now, it's at a 65. And just to put that in perspective, if we go back to March of 2020, when the pandemic was full swing and people were locked up in their houses, it was 53. It's 65 right now. You go back to March of 2009 when we had the banking crisis, it was 44. We're at a 65 right now. Investors are incredibly scared. And I have to tell you, this cannot just be due to Friday's payroll report, because on Friday, the market was down about 2%. So there's more going on than just that. I think the other two issues are, number one, Warren Buffett unloaded half of his Apple position. That's a guy who's buy and hold forever. All of a sudden, he's, maybe he doesn't have a high conviction on Apple going forward. And then, obviously, the increasing probability of a full-scale war in the Middle East. You put those three things together, and it's an ugly situation in the markets today.
And Liz, yeah, I mean, the initial, caveat to this was that jobs report last Friday, and we saw the market sell off on Friday. Fears of a recession, brewing over the weekend. But to Mark's point, you have a potential strike on Israel by Iran, as well as we're in election year. I mean, there's a lot of things that the recession talk is really what.
Look, I think on the economy, the jobs report was pretty poor, but it really kind of brought to a head a lot of concerns about credit card delinquency spiking, consumer sentiment being in the toilet again and perpetually over the last several months. The fact that consumer spending is dwindling. I just think there are an awful lot of reasons people were concerned about a possible slowdown in the economy, and now there is actual evidence that it's happening, and the tip of the spear is job creation. And if we begin to see unemployment go even higher, that really discourages spending, and that's 70% of the economy. I also think, and maybe it's just me, the country feels completely leaderless. I mean, who is speaking out? Who is talking to the American people? Joe Biden can't. It really appears like every time he tries to do that, it's kind of a catastrophe. And Kamala Harris has not stepped up. So here we are, as you point out, Cheryl, facing increased possibility of actual war now in the Middle East, been talked about for months, but now it seems to be at a breaking point, and there is no one talking to the American people. I think that's very unnerving.
Donald Lunskin mentioned that to us earlier in this hour about the fact that it's a compounding effect of what you're seeing, and that you're seeing not the jobs report, concerns about about a potential recession. The Fed did not make a move last week. Are they going to cut by half a point next month, a quarter point? All of that, Mark, is changing. And then I do want to point out to our viewers that I was looking at the 2 and the 10 year just now, and the 2 and the 10 yield curves turned positive, which isn't a good thing. So that's something else that we're watching right now, Mark.
6.5 cuts are now priced in by the end of January. That is incredible. And that only happens if you are expecting a recession. The Fed's not doing that to be nice. They're not doing that to lower mortgage rates so people can buy a house. That is trouble. That spells trouble. And I think I think investors are finally starting to come to the realization that, investors wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted rate cuts with no recession.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen that often.
We could be hopeful that was going to happen.
Correct, correct. But obviously, things have changed. Yeah. And when you're looking at the facts that we have at our fingertips today, it's looking uglier and uglier.